Okay, we're recording.
Excellent.
This is Wrong Speed Record Chat number 29. And we have Mr. Pete Wilkins, ex of Southend, now not of Southend. How are you doing?
Very well indeed. And how are you?
Good, cheers. Where are you?
Well, about 5 years ago, moved to Suffolk, like rural Suffolk. And so just sitting surrounded by goats and cows and that. But yeah. So it's really nice. It's not a hotbed of punk rock, but it's certainly a nicer environment than Essex.
Who's come from Suffolk? The Stupids?
Yeah, from Ipswich. Yeah.
So that's I would say, in terms of UK punk, that's a
biggie, isn't it? Yeah. Kind of, yeah. We're a bit further up than that. We're sort of right over east, sort of up near a place called Halesworth.
Right.
Not from Southwold. But yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, from this particular area, I mean, there's like, there's not that kind of hallowed hardcore 7-inch that's kind of like everyone's waiting to dig up. So, or if there is, I haven't found it yet.
Found it, no. Well, I'm not exactly in the hotbed myself in the middle of Somerset. I think the only band that came from this town or village was Reef.
Oh, the shame.
Exactly. Exactly. There's a cross on their doors.
yeah. I know, sort of. I think not too far from here. I think maybe the Darkness. Okay, like. Yeah. So I mean, if we're sort of doing like top trumps of appalling bands,
I would take.
Pick wisely because I have a few.
I'd take the Darkness over Reef any day of the week.
Oh really? Yeah. I mean, it's like two sides of the same shitty coin, really, isn't it? But yeah. But no, it's cool up here actually. Yeah, it's really. I think it's sort of quite a believer that sort of like more interesting things happen, not in the real hubs anyway, like in the cities. I always think that, especially not now, like, sort of London must be quite difficult, sort of like doing anything in London. And I quite like those sorts of areas where like a band's come out of it and there's like maybe one member or two members that are really into a certain thing. But to be in a band, you've got to get like another couple of people involved and, one likes metal or one's kind of like, one's got, like a drum kit and you're like, okay, well, you're in the band. And from that comes something a bit different, like a bit, especially, I quite like bands where there's like one member that's clearly not into it at all. It's like doing it under duress or because they're so bored. And there's loads of those like, sort of real, I don't know, regional hardcore 7-inches where there's kind of like three real kind of youth crew looking guys, and then there's one guy with like long hair and a leather jacket. You're like, oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, he's the bass player. So yeah,
he's playing a Charvel Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. So it's quite brilliant, really. I've got to quite like that. Otherwise, like those other bands, you're in danger. It's like if you're sort of hanging around in London and you want to do a band that's only like sort of 80s Japanese psych, you can probably find 3 other people that all know those records and want to do it, and you guess what you're going to sound like. That does make total sense. You're more likely to come up with something original, aren't you, or at least interesting. yeah no, not necessarily good, but
I'm trying
as we've talked about, there's no good music. So
I'm trying to think of examples of bands like that, and it's one I mentioned a few episodes back is Bad Breeding, who come out of Stephen,
right.
and I wonder if maybe that's not the case with them, but I don't know. I wonder if that's the case with a band like that. Not quite London, but
Yeah, I saw them actually a while ago. I think they played with the Cool Greenhouse. I think that was that at the Moth Club. Yeah, they're all right. I didn't know anything about them, to be honest with you. I don't really know much about them.
Right, well,
I say much about them, anything about them.
Anything at all. I'm not interested.
Yeah. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I'm going back to bed.
Yeah. What is this? Yeah.
So, here's a couple of records that you're on, for those that don't know. Okay. I'm going to try and do them in order of the ones I've got, and I'm really irritated because I've got You can hold it up if you want. I have a Woe LP that I cannot find in the house, and it's that. And that's really irritating that I can't find that.
I think it's more irritating to know where it is. Best off like in the memory that you can kind of like remember that you have it, but you don't feel obliged to play it.
Well, I'm irritated because I can't find it. And then the band you did after, you can tell me about bands you did before in a second, but then the one that I know that you did after that was Liberate, and I found a double CD.
Ooh,
a Liberate double CD. It's got that stamped on the back and no other information.
Yeah, true to our cause.
Yes, it says Liberate in funny writing there.
Yeah,
and what I assume is the number 2 on that.
Right. Yeah. That may be a comment on the contents. Yeah, it was kind of. I thought quite
triangle. It comes with a triangle.
Merch.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, that was kind of like of a time. It seems. Yeah. Now it's something which actually sort of really irritates me a little bit. But you know, it was kind of that era of like CDRs, and it seemed quite exciting. Every show you'd go to, you know, you could almost buy it. Like, you know, at the end of it, there's a CDR of, you know, people turning up to the show. Do you know what I mean? What it kind of did. I mean, we just didn't really have that was the cheapest way to get what we were doing out. But I think, you know, like the downside to all of that was there is just an infinite amount of CDRs in the world of, you know, like with a bit of spray paint on, and it's just someone twiddling a couple of knobs, and, you know, it's like, 40 minutes of that. And it's just, you know, I get it. And it's, you know, it's cool. Hopefully it paid for someone's petrol to get to the next show or whatever. But yeah, that, you know, for the skip really. But yeah, but for Liberate, I mean, that was a period where we had a brilliant idea of not having any song titles. That was good.
Yeah.
Rarely any information on anything. Yeah. So it was kind of like, I don't know, it seemed such a time when, you know, we were really lucky because John had the studio. So we were a band that kind of were just, I mean, we could just dick around for ages. There was no pressure. So there was no kind of like, we've got enough material together, let's go and record something. It was just do it all the time.
Yeah.
Muck around with stuff. We would, you know, you could go, I don't know, we could just, you know, accumulate a lot of stuff.
Who was in the band then, for those that don't know? I know it's you and John Hannon, and who else? What was the score?
Yeah, going back, I can't remember who would have been in there. I mean, it came out of Woe. It was basically the same band. Woe, we had Kev playing bass, who was a friend from Southend, Mick Kane, who played saxophone, who was just someone that had been into John's studio recording for another band, and John had kind of collared him to sort of say, you seem to be able to play the saxophone. What we want is someone that has a saxophone. How would you like to sort of like almost unlearn everything that you've done, for, you know, and he was just really up for it, really game for it. And I think he just kind of liked hanging out. But yeah, when we'd play shows, like, you know, in any kind of, it's always brilliant sound check, you know, it'd always like run through scales and that, just in case the sound man thought that he was genuinely like some imposter. But yeah. And then he would just like honk on one note for, you know, like 20 minutes. And so then after that, I mean, Liberate really kind of like coalesced. The most productive period probably was like me, John, Tom Scott. Yeah. And Nina.
Yeah.
So and that was kind of like, our probably, the real core of it, when we really felt we were doing something interesting. Yeah, that was Russell from the Pheromones label. Yeah, he put that out just like 100 copies or whatever.
Right, yeah. So by this point, you've gone full Bon Jovi and started titling your songs.
Yeah. It's a bid for world domination. It absolutely worked. No, didn't work. That's right. I remember that. But
one of the other. It comes with a nice insert. It's got a miserable looking early 60s shindig or something's happening.
Right, yeah, it was a found photo that that we kind of so there's Luke put out the CD version, and that was the cover to the CD version.
Right, so that's on Altar.
Yeah. So
And I know there's other Libre records, and the band is still going, and you're not in there.
Yeah, I'm no longer part of it, but I believe they're still, or John's still going, doing stuff. I think mainly also solo stuff probably. I actually don't know, but yeah. So about 5 years ago we stopped.
Yeah, so we first met, or I first met you, I believe, was I think James Parker must have known either you and John, or John Hannon, or
I think maybe he must have recorded at John's studio.
So
with Yeast, maybe.
Yeah, James was in Yeast, and they did a record on Household Name Records, I believe.
Yeah.
And so he must have got friendly with John, and somehow he hooked it up for Colossus and Woe to record together.
Yeah.
So we, as us people, the London characters, drove out to somewhere near Southend to John's studio.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have a feeling that that's when I first met you. So it was yourself.
Probably around about there. Maybe, I think we've probably seen each other at shows before then, or whatever. But I guess that's when we.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure we've been in the same room plenty before that. But
yeah.
Different thing.
And so it was us 5 and you 4, because there was you, John, the honking horn man,
Mick, yeah,
and there was also someone, I believe, playing a bass.
Yeah, that's probably Kev. Yeah. I think it was Kev. Yeah.
And it really, for those who don't know the sort of music that Woe were doing, I can't describe it, and you're going to have to. But it totally opened my eyes to playing with and being involved with something completely experimental, because the bass, all his strings were completely loose, like flapping loose. I think I have a feeling that John, or the honking horn man, was just holding a speaker cone against his amp and playing feedback.
Sounds.
Yeah, and yourself and our Tim were drumming together. Although I think Tim was desperately trying to play straight, and you were doing everything within your power to throw him off.
Yeah, so not really in my power, but yeah. I mean, I think that was it. I mean, we were just really trying to find a new way, which lots of people are trying, aren't they? I mean, it's not. It was just, I think, certainly for John and I, it was a period where we were just going to see so many different things, and just kind of just trying to hoover up as much as possible and put it all into a like a blender, and just take these little bits out of it. I mean, we went to like Morocco to go and see all like the Nawa music in the square, in Jemal Fanar Square there, and we were going to see lots of like free jazz. We were going to the Vortex all the time, and then like the Clinker with Hugh Metcalf, all that kind of stuff. And then there was like the boating thing happening on the Thames, which we were being sort of exposed to, like Bob Cobbing and Derek Bailey and all kinds of stuff like that. And like Hugh Metcalf doing that sort of stuff. The Bowman Brothers, and it's just really interesting people that are just doing it for the sole love of creating something, and no, I mean, if any of it ended up being put out, then
it was a CDR 23 copy.
Yeah. Or I mean, there were sort of like labels, I guess, sort of like doing all of that stuff, but it just seemed really exciting to us as well. And also, I mean, there were other bands which we were kind of like really sort of into as well, like Sightings or bands like that, where they seem to be sort of like taking rock music and sort of like, I mean, you saw them set up and they were a rock band, but like they just seemed to be sort of like doing something which you were like, that's instantly different. And then I think Riot Season put out their album Absolutes, and just the mix on that is just so chaotic and just like all over the place. And that was really sort of inspirational, but also I mean, come out of like my sort of background was like really deeply into like garage punk and stuff like that, so I really like the primitive aspect of it. And I think a lot of experimental stuff it's quite easy for people to kind of get on to, you know, like just accumulating more and more gear. And I found this weird box. You plug it in, it makes this, you know, like weird noise. And you're like, well, yeah, we were trying to do it as much as possible with like the least amount of stuff. So we could go, you know, and then end up playing, you know, in France or whatever. And we just take like a suitcase of bits and pieces. And I've managed to sort of cobble, you know, like borrow one drum out there, and we'd have like a Roland, you know, drum pad or whatever. In the end, John would, you know, have like a violin. Nina would do vocal. Yeah, you know, and that was it. And we'd sort of try and manage to create, you know, sort of like a, you know, something out of that. And I think that was what was, you know, slightly different about us. But yeah,
it completely opened my eyes to it though. I was had never played with that sort of thing before, and so I think we did 1 or 2 days in Southend, and we recorded 2 songs. We recorded a cover of Miles Davis's "In a Silent Way."
You still never thanked me for that.
Well, Miles didn't, no.
Yeah, never got the note saying you opened my eyes to what that could sound like. Yeah, rude.
Yeah, he's known for that though. He's known.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was difficult, but you know.
But he definitely okayed this release. And there was a B-side. The B-side was, or the other side was called Vanilla, and that was kind of us attempting to be more like what you were like. And God knows, I've absolutely no idea if it's any good. But someone released, I think his name was Sarat, and he ran a label called, is it State of Distress or Sound of Distress? Anyway.
Yeah. To be honest with you, it's quite hazy, really. But yeah, we did play a show, didn't we? We played a. Yeah.
We played at I think it was the Vibe Bar on Brick Lane as like a 9-piece with the Enablers.
Yes. Yeah. I remember because I didn't have any drum stands, so I had to cobble together something out of like a ashtray, stand-up ashtray or something, and rest my snare drum on that. But I don't think anyone cared.
I have a feeling that by the time this came out and that gig happened, we'd changed drummers. I've got a feeling Reece drummed rather than Tim.
It's so appalled by that he left the band immediately afterwards.
But if anyone's interested, I was just looking when I was looking in the garage for a Woe record that I couldn't find that Pete held up a second ago. I found a second copy. So if anyone wants one, please and say I want that, because I've got 2. There we go. Anyhow, it was good fun though, and it was like I said,
yeah.
Totally opened my eyes up to that sort of stuff that I had no idea about. So going back to your love of garage rock and like where you came from with that, you recently sent me this 7-inch. Maybe you sent me last year. It came out last year, I believe. Yeah. In 2020, and it's this
Sterling.
It was recorded.
Yeah.
In 1996, It's got you, John, and a third person that you can talk about.
Sam, yeah. So Sam's my best friend from junior school, and then he was a year older than me, and he went to a different senior school than I did. And then when I was about 15, I bumped into him again in a club in Southend, like the place called the Taste Experience, that used to do kind of like a garage and psychedelic kind of night, which was really good actually, like for the time. So we're talking about like 85, something like that. And we were both wearing Cramps t-shirts, and I was like, oh, we're still on the same like path. And yeah, from that point, you know, we've kind of like always been friends. Sam went to live in San Francisco for a while, and he played in a band there called Marzipan, which is this band here. They did like one single, which is absolutely phenomenal. And there is actually the guy that put this out, had this label EchoNet, has got a different label now, and again, archival release many years later, there's a Marzipan LP that's just come out, which I think is, I don't think Sam's on. It's like after he'd come back to the UK. Right. But yeah, really, really like fantastic stuff. And Sam's just got it's just the most sort of like single-minded musical idea of anyone I've ever met in my life, and he's just never ever strayed. He's like the one person that I could go around, or anyone could go around really, and just like flick through his record collection and just be like, you haven't got the record where you kind of, that period where you sort of embraced, you know, like something which has since become like, you know, slightly cringeworthy or whatever. It's just incredible sort of like taste, really. But also, yeah, just as a guitarist, insane. Do you know what I mean? Just like sort of, his solos are just, I mean, they go sort of absolutely nowhere forever, and they're brilliant.
Yeah, this rages really nicely.
Yeah.
And there's your drum kit. Look at that.
Yeah, so I started writing Sterling on it, ran out of room, so that's why I had to do like the I and then like the G at the bottom. And then after I'd done it and sort of looked at it and sort of shook my head, I was like, well, actually, that's pretty much sums up entirely the musical output. So it sort of fitted well. Yeah, it was pretty basic stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's what we were into. We sort of, Sam and I grew up, you know, from that point when we kind of like hooked up again at that club, we'd just be around, like to be sitting in his bedroom for just hours and hours playing. And it was right at the time all the Back from the Grave records came out, Pebbles, and Sam just kind of hoovering, you know, all that stuff up. And
this is the sort of Back from the Grave you're talking about. Everyone needs to get at least one of these compilations.
Volume 4. It's the one.
I love the pictures of the bands.
Yeah. So Sam and I did a band called the Mistreaters before Sterling, before he went to America in like '87. Well, I say we did a band. He was in a band called the Mistreaters. I played drums for them like very early on before I went traveling, just after I'd left school. So I left them then, but we played at like the Clarendon, downstairs at the Clarendon and stuff like that. And that was complete, you know, 64 to 66 garage, you know, like worship. And at the time there was a big garage revival scene kind of, and that was really and there was a load of European bands that were kind of like doing it, not so many UK bands, but you know, still a decent amount. And it kind of really dovetails sort of quite well into like the sort of burgeoning indie scene from that. There's a fair bit of crossover with bowl cuts and you know, like secondhand clothes. But yeah, so that was good. And before that, I'd done another band, like an indie band in Southend called The Bright Young Things, where we'd kind of, but when there was like not a lot of that stuff going on. So
Bright Young,
certainly, you know, like not in Southend, but.
God damn. And that, if you didn't, like, I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot here by saying this, but you didn't release a flexi disc. No,
the Bright Young Things, we recorded a demo, like a demo tape or whatever. We played a bunch of shows, mainly around Southend, supported My Bloody Valentine before they were, you know, like when they came to Southend. But actually, having said that, you know, that time, you know, there was a lot of great bands sort of coming through Southend. I don't know who the promoter was, actually, I can't remember, but at the Blue Boar and places like that, like My Bloody Valentine and Tallulah Gosh and the Passmore Sisters, and tons of bands came through that way before the kind of the next wave at the Crocs, or what became the Pink Toothbrush, and then there was kind of like that sort of thing really exploded a bit more, and then loads of bands obviously came through.
Yeah, so I've mentioned it before, but it's that era where bands would play every town and village.
Yeah. So that's where you kind of like, you know, I didn't really have anyone at school that kind of was into the same music as me, but you know, through like so many of those local gigs and stuff like that, you just found your little clique there, and that was, you know, much better.
Yeah. So just to quickly go back to this was put out by Chunklet.
The master, Henry Owings,
Chunklet. Released a variety of excellent records, and did the Chunklet magazine booklet thing, whatever the hell it was.
Henry, I've been friends for decades, and we kind of had like very similar musical taste. And he put on one of the Chunklet magazines, there was a CD and there was a Sterling track on that CD. So the CD was like called The Money Shot, so I guess that came out around about 96. And Henry was like a massive tape trader, which was like, obviously it was a huge thing around that time as well. And I had a friend from Cambridge who was also like a tape trader that used to, you know, trade tapes with him. And it was through that introduction, through a guy called Jez, that kind of hooked me up with Henry back in the times when you just ring someone up in America and go like, be my friend. And I like that too. Oh, good. And yeah, suddenly we were friends, and that's it. So yeah, and then Henry is just, again, he's like a force of nature. He's just an absolute doer, like he just has an idea and then it just gets done, and he just is tireless, and he's just put on every band, released endless great records, magazines, books, and he's just a fan, super fan.
So that's why this one's here. So
yeah. So I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, his sense of humor is similar to mine. And that is just definitely like find your sort of like little niche and then take the piss out of that niche and alienate yourself from that as well. So it's genius.
And you'll know us by the trail of dead. These ass wipes should have smashed their guitars in the studio while recording. It's that sort of thing, but it's
yeah it just sort of like I mean, definitely sort of upset a few people along the way as well with that. I mean, there was a Chunklet issue about the 100 biggest arseholes in indie rock or whatever, the one with like Steve Albini on the cover, but it's all kind of done through all of this stuff is like done through like a deep love of most of it. I mean, some maybe not, but I think there's some genuine gripes going on in a few, but for the most part, and people don't take this stuff too seriously, but it seems like funnier to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm totally into it.
yeah.
But we are here to talk about records. So I'm going to start going through the list that I sent you.
Yes. Okay.
With a record from your favorite record shop. Tell me all about it.
Well, so growing up, I mean, again, I think like quite a lot of people have said this on when you've spoken to them. Like there used to be just like plentiful record stores, and so you didn't have to. It was like before the days of not before the days, but certainly like you hadn't even living in Southend, you could buy like a copy of Sister when it came out, like in WH Smith. Do you know what I mean? It's not like get too precious about it. You didn't have to have your sort of musical taste curated by like a specialist store or whatever. But and so there was a store called Golden Disc growing up, and I was a huge Jam fan when I was kind of like 10, 11. They were the first band I really, really loved. And my dad was like a huge music fan. He is a huge music fan, classical and rock and stuff like that. And when I was 9, he took me to see Santana. And that very nearly cured me of liking music, because that was so like grotesque. Like it was just awful. But, I mean, his thing. But it did show me like the excitement of like a concert, but with the downside of it being turgid nonsense. So through that, like you find your own thing, and obviously like the Jam were like probably the biggest band in the world at that point, and so it was a very easy thing to kind of glom onto, and that sort of like little mod revival thing. And then they came and played in Southend on their last tour, that Solid Bond in Your Heart tour in 1982, and that was the first gig I went to on my own when I was like 13. On my own. Dad dropped me off, like at the Cliffs Pavilion. And that was absolutely kind of, life-changing, and I think from that point, I've just been searching for that feeling sort of ever since, like that sheer excitement, whatever it was. And so there's a store in Southend called Golden Disc where I'd buy all that stuff. And I mean, you'd kind of, they had everything. That was good. But then really, just after that, there was a guy that had a stall in Gray's Market, and he had like about 3-4 boxes of records every, whatever it was, Saturday or something. And Sam and I used to get the train up, but they would just be records. He'd just have like stuff on Homestead and SST and Fundamental, and that was obviously like what he was into. But you flick through these records, so instead of having a whole shop full of records where you digging through them to find something that might interest you, suddenly you're in front of like 4 boxes where you sort of think, I could almost buy anything here today and I'm sure I'd be interested in it. But at that time, I think this record kind of like was like a compilation that came out, the Wailing Ultimate, and it was on Homestead. And it had Big Black on it. So it's got a couple of big names, had Dinosaur on it, doing Repulsion. So stuff that you would have known. But it was also the first time that I heard like Squirrel Bait were on it, Volcano Suns, Salem 66, all the Homestead roster at that time, Live Skull. First place I heard Big Dipper, which, you know, you can kind of then work back and find out that that was a band called The Embarrassment, and there's this whole other amazing kind of, you know, it was just one of those things where there's a little bit of information on all the bands on it. Great Plains, who had Ron House in there, who then later on went on to, you know, like Ego Summit and God Counter Intuits and a million bands, you know, like that Columbus, Ohio sort of scene, and just phenomenal. And so that was, you know, like I have a love-hate relationship with compilations. I don't play them very much, but looking through my records, and my records are in no order whatsoever, because I just haven't got around to cataloging it. I just can't really face doing it. So I was just kind of like flicking through, and I saw this, and I was like, that was a key record for me. So yeah, the Wailing Ultimate, and then like a gatefold there with all the bands. And that was, I bought that from that guy, and he also, I bought like the Scratch Acid records off of him, and he was just someone that would go like, oh, you like that? You know, like try this or whatever. And so that was, I thought that was like a brilliant place. Then I guess Plastic Passion in London, which came -0. That was always good for awful atmosphere when they all fell out, the guys in there, and split. Did you ever go there? Phenomenal. Like it's just down the road, sort of like down from like where Intoxica is, like, and Rough Trade. So it's like between those two. And it was a really brilliant store, and they used to have loads of great 60s stuff. But there were 3 guys that ran it, and they all fell out, and then they divided this very small store into 3 stalls inside it, and you know, all stocking, you know, like some crossover in what each stall was stocking, and then they would just glare at each other across and you kind of like, you'd be flicking through one side and then like feel the eyes burning into the back of your skull from the other side, and that was great anyway. But and then I thought, sort of after that, really, the next wave of record stores, I really liked Second Layer when that opened in Highgate. And I quite liked that because it was like a store that was, what I liked was it was, you know, it wasn't really around anything else that you'd be going to Highgate for, that one row of like shops, and then he's right there. And he just seemed to get interesting stuff in that I couldn't generally find anywhere else. And I found that record while I was flicking through, the Tunnel Canary. All right. I remember buying that from him, and this is a mental record from Canada, like a sort of no wavy art punk band, which they didn't release anything, maybe like a cassette or something during that time, but it's from like 78 to 84. There's actually a documentary on YouTube of this band. This is more like an art project. It's bananas. So they would do like street performances with like
what are they called again? Sorry,
they're called Tunnel Canary.
Tunnel Canary. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's basically the girl just kind of like screams, and he just plays like insane guitar, and definitely worth looking for anyway. But yeah, brilliant. And then having moved out here, I kind of like don't really get to go to many record stores anymore, so you kind of end up, I don't really have a lot of money for records anymore, to be fair, but there's been a few things that have popped up like that, and now in Sweden there seems to be this huge kind of like scene happening in Sweden that's really interesting, I think. And there's a store there that's kind of like become the hub for that, Discreet Music, I think it's called, Discreet, it's called, in Gothenburg. And so I thought, I found that as well, like the Loop Cell album. That's Ellen, the girl from a band called, she's in a band called Monoculture and Skifthand Enheter. Wow. Not sure that those are pronounced correctly. I wouldn't, my estuary English, I'm sure it's probably not great for the Swedish language, but yeah, Loop Cell, that's really brilliant, really, really brilliant. But there is, to be fair, an enormous amount, like crazy stuff coming out of that you could probably just buy it.
Yeah.
Most of it.
So what are you talking about here? What sort of scene are you talking about, and why?
So it's kind of
Sweden is this?
It's so like it seems like really inclusive. Seems to be quite a lot of people doing, you know, like all helping out in other bands. So Skiffland and had to started off garagey indie, sort of became slightly more. I'm terrible at describing things, but they're just great band, really catchy, got a real neat take on it. Really like one of those things where there are just some bands which you just, as soon as you hear them or see them, you just kind of like, yeah, you get it. You just kind of, you don't seem to be having to put a great deal of, I'm sure they are putting a lot of effort into it, but you know, like you're not trying to hit all these cool points. You're just good. You just kind of, and they're one of those bands. I don't think I've got any of their records laying around, but so they're like that. Monoculture, I think, slightly more electronic. Loop Cell, that's more dreamy, kind of soundscapey, poppy kind of stuff. But then there's loads of more experimental stuff. There's also there's another label, Levend Begravd. That's definitely not pronounced correctly, but you know, he's putting out like more punk stuff. His promoter, he put out a band from Sweden called Kristen Resning,
right,
who they've only put out 1 7-inch, but that's absolutely, that's this one here, like really fantastic stuff. And that's kind of like one of the guys from this band is, you know, like big time punk record collector, so he's kind of like, you know, it comes with you know, like the knowledge of decades of cool stuff before it, but they've really brought something different to it. So that sounds like beat happening, like sort of playing at the same time as like the Shags, but also sort of like you know, like with a hardcore band or something. It's kind of basic. It's like stand-up drums and one guitar, and then like the singer just kind of like shout. Brilliant. It's really brilliant.
It sounds exactly up my street.
Definitely. Kristen Resning. So I'm not sure how much stuff they're doing anymore, but they are a really phenomenal band. But yeah, there's loads of archival stuff coming out from there. But yeah, if you look on that discrete site, it's just like it's one of those ones where you endlessly sort of think, I wish I had a lot more money. Hoovering up that stuff, and it sort of like goes out of print pretty quickly as well. So
wow. And then and how's ordering from Europe for you?
Well, you just don't do it anymore, thanks to this sort of like miserable, corrupt government. Venal, disgusting pig people. We are where we are, and it's just, I mean, occasionally I you know, have a splurge, but you know, unfortunately, you know, family, you know, finances come first or whatever. So I mean, you know, a lot of people probably sort of say you don't need any more records, but you can't, you know, when you're into it, you never not looking, or you never not buying it. So
every night I'm going to bed at 10 because I've got to get up really early, and I always drag it out for another hour as I go through like websites, and I'm like through, like I have a list of sites I always check to see if they've added anything, and nightmare. And I'll open up a site, and in the top right hand corner it'll be the basket, and it'll still have the shit that I put in from the night before. Like, I don't even know what that band is, but yesterday I was fascinated.
I needed that record yesterday. I think sometimes it's kind of like it's maybe prevented me from buying things which I probably didn't need, but for the most part I just sort of sit there and just kind of like get glum about, you know, the records that are sort of slipping through my hands. But there you go. Never mind.
Hit me with a record with memories.
Probably going back to sort of like sitting in Sam's bedroom, just like listening to, I mean, he had an older sister who was really into punk, and her boyfriend at the time, who later became her husband, was in a band in Southend called The Get, who were kind of like a real arty post-punk band. He was really into the Fall, but his sister, Sam's sister, would Sarah, she would go and see like the Gun Club and the Scientists and, you know, Black Flag and this sort of stuff. She'd have all those records, and so that kind of filtered down through Sam. But then when we, you know, found our thing, the garage punk stuff, a record that I found, which I've played probably like more than almost any other record I own, this one here, like the Morlocks. This is pure mid-80s garage revival. From San Diego, used to be a band called before that, this band, the Gravedigger Five. But yeah, total, like, typical of that time. There's eight tracks on here. I think 6 are cover versions. But you know, at the time, in like, you know, 1985, 86, when this came out, you couldn't really hear that stuff. You know, like they do a cover of 24 Hours Every Day, Headstone Song, Born Loser, I guess, which is kind of like, you know, probably one of the better known ones, Murphy and the Mob, and like the Squires track on there, and they do Judgment Day. And like 2 originals on there, which are the equal of any of the covers they do. But they had this one kind of like secret ingredient, which was the singer Leighton Koizumi, who just had the most kind of like out of control scream, and kind of like, it was just ramped up a bit, kind of like the Mummies before the Mummy, you know, like what the Mummies did with garage rock, and just kind of like supercharge it a little bit. Yeah. And I guess what sort of like Japanese bands do, like take a format and kind of like just seem to
dial it up.
Dial it up a little bit, yeah. So it's kind of like, musically it's like super authentic, but with this kind of like, the vocals are like wild, and it's just an absolute fantastic record. And that and along, you know, like the British equivalent for me would have been like the Green Telescope EP, right. Which is like Alan McLean, Lenny Helsing, who they went on to be a band called the Thanes. They're from Scotland, home of most of the best music that's come out of this rotten isle. And it's, yeah, again, 4 tracks on that, 1 cover, but by the Outsiders, the Dutch beat band, the Outsiders. 3 originals, again, the equal of anything that came out in the hallowed 64-66 period. And that record, again, we just played endlessly, and that's phenomenal. But it's actually on Imaginary, which later on got out like record. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like not what you'd kind of, So sometimes, you know, don't collect labels, kids, because you can take a bum stick sometimes. But yeah, that's absolutely genius.
What are you thinking about the 7-inch single nowadays? Like,
I love it. Yeah. To me, I'd almost rather have only 7-inch singles. I think it's the ultimate format for me. Like, I have such a like useless attention span. That, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, for what I love, I mean, yeah, for most of everything I love, the 7-inch single is the perfect format. I think it looks better than the other formats. I think the artwork looks better than other formats. Just, you know, it's just like 45s really. With the experimental stuff, kind of like, you know, it's always nice to have on vinyl, but a lot of it doesn't really, you know, sort of, you're better off some sort of like digital copy, or, you know, like CD. You know, there's like no point in sort of, you know, listening to Eliane Radigue on like vinyl and then having to get up like midway through like 20 minutes of like a, you know, like microtone or whatever, and like flip it over for the next one. You know, oh, here it is coming on again. So, you know, in that sense, but yeah, for most stuff, certainly for like punk and stuff like that, so many like phenomenal punk 7-inches, not nearly as many phenomenal punk LPs in my eyes. So
right,
no, 7-inch single, man, the way to go. But again, expensive now, like expensive to do. It used to be super cheap, but like,
I sort of, so this, my guess is Henry at Chunklet made what, 300 of them, if I had to guess.
No, 200 I think of those. We were going to do, I think, 20. And then we go because he does like lots of lathe cuts and stuff like that, so we were going to do kind of like a really limited run, and then we sort of just talked ourselves into believing that people really need primitive music in their life.
It is good if like but it could do with being available in the UK.
Yeah, I do have copies, so you can order it off the Chunklet site. I'll just send them out from here. So like with cheaper shipping. So yeah, I send out like there's a whole bunch of on the Chunklet Bandcamp stuff. Mainly
people put out. Check it out. Go and have a listen, because it's really, really excellent. And then 5-track 7-inch.
Yeah, there's probably like another 5-track sort of like worthy one. Like, should that one ever sell out, that, you know, maybe do another.
You should. One. I know, like I've heard of a label that would be interested. I think it's really good. So, yeah, bollocks to it. Yeah. Okay. Bargain find.
Bargain find. It was a the one that came to mind, and I was like amazed. I managed to find 4 of the records from this hall. I think there may have been one more that I got at the time. It was a second-hand record store in Southend, which was a really brilliant shop actually. Carmel Records, tiny shop. But yeah, I just kind of happened to bump into Paul one day in town, who owned it and ran it, and he just sort of said, "Oh, yeah, some stuff come in that you might be interested in." Like I think like the day before, so just called in on the way home, and I must admit, like at the time, a couple of them I had no idea what they were, but yeah, I mean, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I paid £35 for 5 records,
right?
And they are this one, the Pseudo Sisters. The nice thing is though, like it's really nice shape as well. Everything's like was not trashed from that. So yeah, the Pseudo Sisters, EP on Dead Good. This one, the Mental extended play, which is Dick Lucas, who went on to be in like Citizen Fish and the Subhumans, and like, huge fan of that stuff. But this is like pre all of that. So good stuff. Again, primitive. This one, which is brilliant, which I'd actually incidentally bought this on like it's Air Raid by Disorder, but not the Bristol noise like a Narco one. It's like, but I think they were from Sunderland or somewhere like maybe up north. But so that was like a bootleg which I owned, and then he had like a copy of it in there. But it was kind of like all pre sort of Discogs and stuff like that. So you kind of like, you don't see these records, but you're not kind of like going, oh, that's a record that's worth like tons of money. But yeah, that's brilliant. Disorder, Air Raid. So yeah, kind of it didn't. I think there was only 100 copies that came out with a picture sleeve at the time. But yeah, the picture sleeve is the bootleg, and then that's the original. And then this, which was a band from Brighton, the Killers, and the album called Killer, and the first track's called Killer. And to be honest with you, I mean, this is like true second division punk. But like, how can you can't resist that cover. They went on to become like Joe Cool and the Killers.
They're in the mouth. They're in the mouth of the Killer there.
Yeah, they're in the mouth of the Killer. I mean, this is the level that they're working on. The band's called the Killers, the album's called Killer, lead track called Killer, and that pretty much, that appeals to me. That sort of like the lack of imagination is what we should all be aspiring to.
I've got one idea.
Yeah. It's not great, but it is. Yeah, that, and they're very much riding the wave of like the punk rock, like bandwagon at the time, I guess. And to be fair, I think they're a little bit skilled. Like the musicianship is not totally useless, which doesn't really appeal. I prefer the more useless end. but yeah, nice to have anyway, if only for that. Which I mean, how can you not own that?
It's very strong.
Yeah. So yeah, the Killers. So yeah, that was and then subsequently a few of those like 7 inches have become highly sought after and worth a lot of money. And but yeah, I mean, it's kind of I don't know. It's one of those things, and it's like inevitable with anything that's kind of you collect.
Do you care about that? Like, I don't care about that.
No, it's kind of I only buy, like if I'd have seen those records in there at the prices that they would fetch today, there's no way I'd be saving up to buy them. Do you know what I mean? I like things come to me. I'm a believer in that, like if you're into something, that stuff just ends up coming your way eventually. But I'm generally quite happy with like a reissue or, like as long as it sounds good enough. I'd always rather have an original copy, but I'd rather have I mean, I know there are people that sort of like, unless it's the original, I'm not, I don't even want it.
Yeah.
I'm not like that. I want the music, and when the original stuff comes up from that, then I'm really kind of like, oh, that's great, that's really nice.
Actually, on that note, then I've got a record here. So I've got like, especially with punk rock, I have a lot of bootleg versions of albums.
Yeah.
Because they either haven't been reissued, or I don't care about spending too much on them, or whatever. And one of actually, so this ticks 2 boxes. This is the bootleg version of an album, and also something we did speak about before we started recording, because I wanted to confirm it was true. But when we first met up with you, so when Colossus first went down and met Woe, James sort of was like, oh, I've got a feeling they're all like straight edge type characters and all that sort of stuff. So I quite like.
And you were all like hopeless junkies, so it was going to be like quite the rumble when we met.
Yeah, exactly. It's Jets versus Sharks when we rolled in.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so the bootleg album I've got is this, and and I'm never going to buy the original. I have talk of it being reissued, but like officially at some point. But like this is on Suicider discs.
Right. Yeah. I mean that's been booted like probably like 1 million times in that record, and it's just great to have, isn't it? I mean, great record, just really sort of flick over it. If I was in like the boot sale next Sunday in Suffolk, and I flick over among Perry Como records, there's a SSD record, then I'll buy it. But
because the original of this is like knocking on £1,000, right?
Yeah, it's ludicrous.
So I probably bought this for £10. It comes with the insert and everything else, and so I've got a lot like that. I've got like the Germs albums like that. I've got a whole bunch that I'm like, I don't give a shit. I just want the music. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it seems a bit anachronistic. Like I know you see certainly like on Instagram, some people that got these like insane collections, and you just sort of think, well, you just got a lot of money. It's like, so like buy it when it comes out. That's different, like if you've got all these records because you were part of that scene and you just bought them all because that's what everyone was doing. That's different. But when you see some like, I don't know, 30-year-old kid who's got like every like sweated hardcore like EP or whatever, has got the Coro EP and the God knows what else, like all the touch and go and the Discord stuff, and you're like, well, I don't know, it's like a house or something, like just spend your money slightly more wisely. But
I agree. I'm more into like yourself there, buying from that Swedish label. What have I've written down? Oh God, I can't read it.
Discreet.
Yeah, Discreet.
Yeah, so that's the shop. Yeah.
So but you're buying new things, and it's way better, I think. To like spend your money by the new things as they come out, but with the old shit, just buy either crappy bootlegs or cheap, or not bother. Like chasing down.
Well, stuff comes your way, doesn't it? You just like stumble over those things. It's really nice when you suddenly get like a, like you find an original copy of something somewhere or wherever. It's quite, it's a nice thing. But I mean, it's not like good records have stopped coming out. There's plenty to be spending your money on now, and But then some of those like new records, like unless you can grab them immediately, like they're almost instantly like records seem to become. I mean, there's a whole bunch of records that sort of used to seem to be worth money that now you can pick up for not very much money. But then there are also other records which, I mean, I certainly traded a couple of records which, in the sort of late 80s, which I thought, God, I've got like 150 quid trade for that, which, subsequently they're like whatever, £800-900 records, But like at the time, I was like delighted with the trade. You know what I mean? So it's like,
I'm not.
What can you?
Yeah, I'm definitely not precious about that crap.
No. They'll all be going in a skip, I'm sure, when I die. Anyway, it's just like that.
Yeah, your grandkids will look at it and go, "What the hell's this shit?"
Yeah, exactly. So like, like a load of old tut. Yeah, good.
Hit me with a record bought on tour.
On tour in France, I remember going to, I'm sure it's called Bimbo Tower in Paris, that record. There's a load of great record stores in Paris. Seems to just be awash even now. Got a friend who's got a store called Pop Culture, which is really good, like a comic book store and record shop. And he's always, he puts the Wolfhounds on when we go to France.
Okay. Quick pause. The Wolfhounds. I forgot to mention. You now drum them. Tell me about them.
Well, weird. Yeah. Like, so look, the Wolfhounds, they're from Romford. just like one of my absolute favorite bands when I was kind of growing up, like around that time, and certainly of that British sort of scene. They're on that C86 cassette. But really at that time, they just released a string of records, and they split up in 1990. But for my money, like really one of the, just truly a different league to most of like what was being lumped in with that indie scene then. And you know, like people sort of said, oh, a bit like the British Sonic Youth or whatever on their last sort of records. It's really noisy stuff. And they're sort of quite lucky that they had sort of a few, it wasn't one person driving the band, there was, you know, different people all pushing sort of very creative things. So the guitarist Andy Golding is got like a really unique style, which is very, very definitely Andy Golding when he's playing the guitar. Singer Dave Callahan is got like a very distinctive voice and phrasing, is also really good lyricist, and good guitar, like quite a unique sort of guitarist as well. And I was just a huge fan. And then around, I guess, sort of like the early internet days, I found a website that had like this sort of like really elementary sort of website that had live and demo sort of Wolfhounds things on it. And I was like, oh man, I like downloaded it all immediately. I was like, oh, stuff I haven't heard, you know, and I knew the records inside out. And yeah, I was like, oh, this is incredible. And it was like a contact thing on it. I was like, where did you get all this stuff? You know, have you got any more? And then got like an email back sort of almost like instantaneously, like, oh, it's Andy, the guitarist. Like, no one really cares about it, you know, like the first person to sort of like get in touch or whatever. And we sort of, you know, built up a friendship like that. And then in 2005, they wanted to do some like 20-year anniversary show at the Purple Turtle. And their drummer, who was a great drummer, like Frank Stebbing, was living in Dubai. I think he still lives in Dubai. And Andy was like, oh, you play the drums, like, do you want to do it? And I was like, oh my God, you know, like absolutely yes. And then like went back, played all the records and was like, oh shit, like, you know, I can't play this stuff. Like Frank Stebbing was like, way better. But then we kind of like, you know, so the Wolfhounds, yeah, slightly more straightforward for me now. But yeah, so we did that, and then there were some more shows that came up. We did those, and then they were like, well, both Dave had gone on to be in Moonshake, and then that had like finished. Andy had gone on to do other things as well, a band called Crawl. But neither of them had stopped writing stuff. And David was doing a thing like this called The Surplus, and they were like, well, should we just try and work up some of these other things, you know, like that we've got? And one thing led to another, and then so we just started writing new stuff, and then we're subsequently like been going longer than the first incarnation now, and it's really good. So the new record, so that came out just obviously during lockdown to like everyone's records come out and disappear or whatever. But yeah, it was well received. So
July the 10th, 2020. Liner notes by Stuart Lee.
Yeah, big fan. He had us play at his All Tomorrow's Parties, and again, absolute music nut and into a lot of similar things, and a long time friend of Dave's as well. So a lot of people confuse the two of them. They have a similar look. So at one stage. So that's the Wolfhounds.
Did you see the is it Nightingales film?
Yeah, great. And we've played with the Nightingales a bunch, and so similar sort of, you know, trajectory of that, but no one as yet making a documentary on the failed careers of the Wolfhounds. But But
yet. It's not failed yet.
No, not yet. No. We're still in ascendance. But yeah, and it's just a lot of fun. It's it's good, and it's nice as well because you can get to play with like younger bands or whatever. And I think I am quite proud that the Wolfhounds will always sort of put a shift in, like turn up like 4 grumpy, overweight, middle-aged men, and still kind of like for that 45 minutes or whatever, I feel like we can hold our own against the whippersnappers. But so it's good. It's nice when people come up and go, oh God, like I thought you were all like cab drivers, didn't realize you were the band, sort of thing, and then it's like you know, you sort of do that and they're like, Jesus, didn't expect it to sound like that. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Like it. But yeah, so what we talk, oh yeah, Record Sport on tour.
Sorry, yeah.
So yeah, Bimbo Towers. That, I remember buying that. I was quite excited to see that. Guilty Razors, like a French punk band that came out. I mean, from the time, like 70, 78, I think, 79, but this was 2006 when we'd gone out, and this came out. I think they only put out a 7-inch at the time, I think, maybe. I want to be a rich. And this was like a compilation of other tracks, and that 7-inch that came out then. I remember to be really excited to find that, and that's a solid record. Love a lot of that French punk stuff, and the at the same time picked up that one in that Bimbo Towers, which was like a really great start. I had a really good, and that's the vinyl on demand reissue of the first, I think it's the first Hijo Kaiden record, like Japanese noise thing. So Jojo, I won't even, I'm bad enough with the Swedish and the German pronunciations. I won't try the Japanese ones. But anyway, yeah, I mean, this is kind of like slightly different to like what it became, that just like that total noise assault. This one's like a little more nuanced, or like sort of finding their way. But again, I think, you know, it was limited when it came out originally. I'd never ever seen a copy or anything like that. And then flicking through the racks in there, lo and behold, Vinyl on Demand, who seemed to put out an astonishing amount of records, not generally, you know, like that interesting to me, but, you know, certainly some. And yeah, so I was really pleased to find that and finally hear it. So that, and then the only other one I found whilst trying to find something I'd want to was this one, Henning Christiansen, more appalling pronunciations from me. Yeah, Henning Christiansen record, which I bought in Berlin when we were in Berlin, a shop called Gelber Music, which was like someone's front room kind of thing, like in a residential street. John had been there before and sort of said, "Oh, you've got to go to this like record store," and like took me there. And yeah, I bought this, which was just kind of like, yeah, one of those typical, what the French like to call museum music, but it's it's got Joseph Beuys doing like one of his very last things. He was supposed to be the performance was too ill to do it, so he did it over the phone, genuinely phoning in a performance.
We've all done it.
Yeah, it's got like June Paik on it, and yeah, total kind of, yeah, that really was, you know, where we were, you know, with Liberate at the time. That was like a perfect sort of record to pick up. And, you know, like I say, we were hoovering up anything which was just out of the ordinary, out of our ordinary.
Yeah. Do you find with those records that they might not be regular listens, but they're enormously influential? And like,
yeah, sort of like rewire your brain a bit. Yeah, which is kind of like, you know, like the objective of having them, really. But I'm always surprised that some records which I really remember as being profoundly difficult records, you know, like you sort of put them on again and like, actually,
yeah,
this now makes that. And it's always happened to me, you know. I remember sort of when I was a kid reading that, you know, like Pere Ubu were a punk band, and finding like a Pere Ubu record and taking it home, you know, not having heard them, and, you know, like putting it on and going like, what? This isn't punk. Like I was, you know, firmly in the punk and disorderly compilations world, you know, like with you know, like the UK 82. I was like, what? You know, what is this? And then obviously, you know, like a few years later, suddenly when it all clicks and you're like, oh, this is so much better, you know, this is so much better than other things, you know, like.
That's it. I've got like there's records I pick up almost knowing that I'm not going to listen to them hundreds of times, but I'm going to get possibly as much from them as I will from a record that I'll listen to 100. Do you know what I mean? Like, it sort of, it almost gives you, you pick a record up, you listen to it, and it almost gives you permission to try something different. Like you go, okay, yeah, they've done that, so I can totally. And one of them for me is the Billy Bow stuff.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever check out?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, that was crazy when that came out.
Yeah, I've got like 3 or 4 of their albums, and this one I just absolutely love. And it was just like it's like street recordings mixed in with other things and whatever. Like there's a lot going on, and all the songs are named after the songs from like Funhouse, the Stooges.
Yeah.
Just like down in the street, loose, TV-eyed dirt, and then instead of like 1971 or whatever, or what's the song? Is it 60?
Yeah, 97. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 2010. Funhouse, Lagos Blues. But yeah, but it just gives you, it almost get you by them. You know, okay, I might not listen to it 100 times, but I'm going to get a lot from it.
Yeah, definitely.
I got this thing like with books, say, just any old book. I might buy it, but I might only read it once.
Yeah.
You know, I'm more than likely only going to read it once, if that. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So why can't you buy an album and only listen to it a couple of times and still think you've got your value from it?
Yeah. I am completely on board with that. Yeah. I mean, I think most of the people that you're probably talking to, you know, I mean, if we had to sit there and start at one end of our record collections and start playing them all, I've got records here I'm never ever going to listen to before I die. Do you know what I mean? It's like, how can I? You know, there's thousands of the bloody things, and you're only buying, you know, accumulating more. And, you know, it's like, if you start at one end to just work your way through, I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. But at the time, all those records, you know, are important when you buy them. And, you know, that if you only hear them once or twice, then yeah, the ones that really don't do anything, you know, and you've gone back to them, then bin them, whatever.
Yeah. Well, they all help build what you're doing musically or in any.
Yeah.
And like, and that goes with like this sort of music and the way they went about their business, and then this sort of music and the way they go about their business.
Absolutely.
They're both the same, really. I think, but
yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, a record that people wouldn't think that you would dig. And this is probably going to be tricky, judging by this.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, like a fairly recent purchase, like this Cardiacs record, like almost like a pathological sort of dislike of prog and like well played, well thought out music in some aspects. And Cardiac's definitely a band that I sort of had at arm's length, you know, like for a long time. Maybe something to do with kind of like, I don't know, whatever it was. But I think after Tim Smith died, I kind of like just, you know, went back to it for a moment. And I've got a young daughter who's like just coming up to 4 years old. And we were playing like a couple of the Cardiacs videos, and she became absolutely obsessed with them. So like for a good, you know, like 2 or 3 month period in the car when we're at home, just like watching and, you know, listening to the same kind of like about half dozen Cardiac songs. And she just, whatever it was, kind of like it was quite nice to see it through the eyes of, or the ears or whatever of, you know, this kid who's, you know, nothing to sort of like judge it against. And I think just because it was like all over the place and funny noises and definitely the way they looked in the videos and stuff really caught her imagination. And I sort of like became, a bit sort of like, you know, fond of like some of it. And now I've ended up, the slippery slope. So, you know, like God knows, like Canterbury prog next, or I hope not. So there was that, which I think some people that know me would be sort of like, oh right, Cardiacs. And then I don't know, everyone's got those records which you kind of like pick up, which kind of like just, you know, like fairly just esoteric, you know, just like nonsense records, like a Uri Geller record, or you know, you're like, oh, that'd be funny. But I know Village People record, that's a fairly common one for like punk collectors or whatever, because of the B-side. It's got a punk B-side, like fake punk, which I guess now has almost got as much cachet as real punk. So probably actually more punk than that Killers record. But yeah, when they were desperately sort of like coming out the disco thing and trying to find trying to find their way into like what else they could exploit. A track called Food Fight, which actually like, you know, decent punk song. Petula Clark single, which I really like. But you know, I mean, you know, music's music, and it's like, I say that after having slagged off prog and everything else like that. It's definitely not music, but I don't know. Like, there's always something that kind of catches my ear that from things that I'm not familiar with, that I really think, oh, I'd really like a copy of that. But I sort of dread sort of delving too deep into it. You know, like, you know, I've got, I don't know, 20 or 30 like dub records or whatever. It could be so easy to sort of just fill your house full of, you know, like probably amazing dub records, and you sort of almost have to stop myself from getting too interested in it, you know. So I think, oh God, you know, like where does it end? Same as like jazz and all that nonsense.
Do you think do you think the Cardiacs are prog?
Well, in my world, just because I think they were just they're so proficient, and I think like Tim Smith's vision, you know, whatever, I mean, he's fairly singular, but really kind of very considered, very thought out. I know they came up like, you know, like Cardiac Arrest or whatever, but yeah, and I think quite high concept, and I mean, they're quite a lot of fun, you know. A lot of those records, they are really sort of catchy, but yeah, it's definitely like a crossover. It's like probably a bridge band. Like I'm sure you could find lots of Cardiacs fans who, you know, also like, you know, like I don't know, Pink Floyd or something like that nonsense.
Because my problem with prog is that they've got some good bits wedged in between hours of not so good bits. Whereas I think the Cardiacs, and I really like the Cardiacs, have lots of good bits put together.
Yeah.
There's still lots of bits like a prog band, but condensed into 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. But there's lots of really excellent, like earwormy bits, well played, granted, but kind of beautiful. Whereas prog is not like that.
No, I mean, I guess because, you know, they've got some like long songs, and then suddenly there's like a 30 seconds of a, you know, like ska bit or whatever, and you know, generally sort of like enough to make you sort of vomit normally. But I've kind of like almost taught myself to ignore that bit and just enjoy the other 6.5 minutes, you know. So trained Pavlovian or whatever it is, but yeah. But yeah, so I mean, genuinely, they're a band I just a huge amount of respect for, and like, you know, I think I can totally see why people get it, but it's kind of like there's certain things for me, like prog is just something that I've never really found appealing. And there's a clip in the Dr. Feelgood. Have you ever seen that Oil City Confidential?
I haven't. I don't think. No.
Oh right, yeah. So there's a clip in there of Wilko Johnson being interviewed, or the band being interviewed, and Wilko Johnson, they're talking about, so it's the mid-70s, but they're mainly talking about like rock, I guess, and, you know, like what else is happening at that time. So probably all your like Zeppelin and stuff like that. And they ask like what Wilko Johnson, like what he thinks of it, and he's like, just in that really sort of sneering voice, he's like, yeah, it's children's music. And I was kind of like, always resonated with me. I was like, yeah, it is children's music. Yeah, like and I actually sort of like, you know, there's nothing wrong with children's music, you know, it's like probably brilliant, but you know, yeah, kind of like, I was like, yeah, no, that sort of validated it in my head. I was like, yeah, things like that. I was like, yeah, I don't need to listen to that, you know, like good for the people that do want it. And then same with like the garage thing, you know, like after 66, 67, you know, you've got this period where everything goes a bit, you know, like hippie and whimsy and stuff like that, and freak beat. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need to hear that. There's enough killer techs and garage singles from like 65, 66 to keep me happy for a lifetime, you know, like I don't need to sort of hear what these people then did.
My big favorite in the house at the minute is Go Gorilla by the Shondells.
Oh yeah, what a track. Yeah. Man, yeah, that's a song to get things done to.
Everyone in the house is walking around going, go Gorilla, go.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, that sort of thing appeals perfectly to like my mentality. That's about the level that I operate on in almost every part of my life. So yeah, that song is
It's interesting because I like do this like little radio show that no one listens to, but I enjoy doing it. And like, so this Sunday I had that song, and it went into a Goo Goo Muck by the Cramps.
Right. Yeah.
And like you can hear, like they're the same, you know, like
yeah.
It's, I mean, okay, not musically exactly, you know, not ripping it off, but they've come from there.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a cover anyway, and so it's like, but that's yeah. I mean, it's all part of the same. Yeah, that's definitely where I'm at. That level is like perfect. That speaks to the sort of primitive brain that I have, and that's.
If you okay, in that case, then, if you was to say someone needs to get one. I want to say album because I like buying albums, but you could say 7-inch. If someone was to buy one thing from that, like one 64 to 66 type record. You know, not one that's like £7,000 or whatever, but something.
No, well, lots and lots of that stuff has been reproed, and is, you know, it's like widely available as a, you know, like a bootleg or repro or whatever. I don't know. I think maybe something like "It's Trash" by the Cavemen. Okay. Like that song is just, again, it, like whatever it is, like 2.5 minutes long, starts off insane, is insane in the middle, it's insane at the end, you know, and it's like whatever, 1965, 6 or something, and it's just perfect, like an absolutely perfect record. It's wild. It's like you're not quite sure what's going on. It's like everything about, you know, music for me in that, you know, that's definitely a. If I owned an original copy, that would be, yeah, that would be in like the firebox to sort of grab if I was running out the house, you know, like. But yeah, but just phenomenal. Right.
Yeah. And were you into the Mummies and stuff when they came? Because that's
loved the Mummies. I loved that sort of take on it, that it wasn't too reverential. Yeah. And they came over in, was it 94? That was great. To see them. But yeah, I loved the Mummies. And then they came over not so long ago, and I was kind of a bit hesitant to go, but I went just because I couldn't help myself, and they were absolutely brilliant as well still. And like Trent Rand, the singer, you know, you like, I thought, well, he's not going to be jumping on the keyboard like doing splits or whatever, but sure enough, you know, he was. And they haven't aged a day. But yeah, they're fantastic band. Yeah. Again, like they're just, I love that, you know, that attitude, you know. There's something about the way they did it, which was like, you know, is a perfect encapsulation of the sort of probably like the 13, 14, 15-year-old mindset of like who were playing those original records, you know, just something, you know, childlike in that, I guess. But yeah, I mean, genius band for me. Yeah, I love them.
There's one of the records I've got by them, it's got like a spiel by one of the band on the back, and it goes on about how what is it, Sub Pop tried to sign them or something, and they told
that's the bootleg of them doing like Uncontrollable Urge, where it's like, you know, it's like what made you ever think that we would be interested in, you know, it's like keep your hippie love weed or whatever. yeah I mean, like love all of that really snotty kind of, yeah, dismissive, yeah, elitist, perfect, yeah everything that should be. Genius band, every single one, and you know, all the offshoots as well, them and like Supercharger at the time, who Greg Lowry sort of went on to do the rip-offs, and and sort of again snotty, just genius band.
Yeah, I got a rip-off record actually. It's the one where they're I think they're taking a piss against a police car.
Yeah,
I think it's
got a record.
Yeah,
brilliant,
great stuff.
And they came over, actually played at the Boston Arms. After they'd sort of split up, it was like a reunion show, but they never came over in their peak. But again, they were absolutely didn't disappoint. They were brilliant. Greg Lowry still having like you know, each of the other members tune his bass like during like, the performance. I just don't care about, you know, you like, watch that and you're like, even if it's shtick, it's brilliant stick. You know, like,
absolutely
love
it.
Did you
buy into the UK stuff then, like the head coats, or is that just too?
I like it. Yeah, kind of. I think it's that stuff seems like more. It's almost like a scene into itself. That Medway sort of chat and scene, you know, like the Prisoners, Milkshakes, Pop Rivet. You know, like there's so much to go at there. There's just again, almost like
is there like a Southend rivalry? Can you see them across the river?
Absolutely, yeah. With our kind of like, you know, like who could we put up against them, like Eddie and the Hot Rods? But yeah, I mean, I mean, I think it's great, but it's kind of like it's one of those things where, you know, I've got a few records that kind of like does me, you know. But I you know, love the fact that Billy Childish can kind of like again be so single-minded and pure to the core.
Because he sounds like, I was going to say it earlier, but he sounds like your man Sam from.
Yeah. Like the monomaniac. Yeah.
This is shit I like, sort of thing.
Yeah. No, he was a big fan of all that. Yeah, definitely.
So the last subject I have, and I've got a feeling you're going to be into this format. I don't know why. I feel like there's going to be a lot of this sort of music on this format. So it's 10-inch.
Yeah, I don't mind the 10-inch. Like, it's kind of, yeah, sort of the odd sized record. I mean, it is definitely a sort of like pain in the arse, isn't it? But the 10-inch is almost kind of like the acceptable face of the 8-inch flexi or whatever. So I was sort of I was thinking that, which is an 8-inch flexi disc, that Born Against one, you know, like, okay, you know, like brilliant, nothing, you know, there's no sleeves to fit, nothing, you know, like quite, you know, good. I thought Das Oath had a like good take on it by just doing a 9-inch or whatever, but then putting it in a 12-inch sleeve, so it's like, well, you know.
Oh, that's the, see, I've got the 9-inch, I've got that, but not in the 12-inch sleeve.
So yeah, I mean, again, like another genius kind of, you know, like Mark McCoy sort of marketing scheme of like go on tour, just print up 60. I think, you know, it's his like number 11 of 66, but it's only 66 covers, you know, like it's not like.
Did you see Das Oath then?
Yeah. Fantastic.
I saw them at the Swan.
I didn't see him at the Swan. I saw him at the Underworld. So yeah, that's sort of transatlantic thrash terror. But yeah, phenomenal. I love, great. I love Big Charles Bronson fan, and I thought, you know, Das Oath were, you know, they're equal as well. You know, I love those records, and I think Mark McCoy's got like a fairly singular take on it as well. Yeah, just fun, and again, you know, what's not to like about that band? Yeah, love them. Found that the annoying B-52s kind of like come in a rectangle. Can't file that anywhere. They're easy to find those records because they're just laying around waiting for a home. That 10-inch, I was pleased to find that at Cafe Otto. And Brotsman was, you know, definitely one of those touch points, certainly for Libere. You know, like truly inspirational. But yeah, just a fantastic looking record as well. You know, I mean, even if you sort of, you know, can't take the music, you can definitely take the cover. You know, sitting in a deck chair in gabardine raincoats, smoking. Right. Perfect. That I really loved this band, Slug, when they came out. There's like a lot of that early 90s noise rock. I was quite big into all of those bands, and I think sort of Slug don't really get the sort of like the kudos that a lot of the other bands did. But I saw them in LA playing a bowling alley, and they were fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic. But sort of they did a split single with Unsane around that time. Yeah, I'd gone to stay with the drummer from 16, another one of those things where you just kind of like write to people, and you know, I was just endlessly writing to bands because, you know, that I liked before the internet, and you'd always get, you know, so exciting to then get like a letter back from, you know, someone just going like, what are you writing to me? Yes. But you know, so all that, you know, it's kind of like you know, I remember like Nation of Ulysses would always send back like, you know, crazy letterheads, and you know, like, then that's huge.
I had that record on hand. I was wondering if you want to mention this.
Yeah, I mean, again, like just a brilliant band, and their London show was just awesome. Again, hugely.
Look how awesome that cover is.
Yeah, but that's a perfect example of, I think, of a band that really just took lots and lots of different influences from quite a varied, you know, quite a wide range.
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, like definitely a band that sort of hit the road absolutely perfectly formed, you know, like running those first two singles, absolutely incredible. The live show, the look, everything about them just was absolutely brilliant. I think subsequently sort of like lost me a bit. I liked the makeup, but it was kind of like, yeah, okay. And then after that, it's sort of like bit law of diminishing returns for me, but that's just me personally. And I think probably like an age thing as well, you know, like you see Nation of Ulysses at that point, you know, and if you were, you know, that age and you were, you know, to be there, then that's obviously, that's what makes an impression. And sometimes you have to like look at that and see, you know, like, I guess for you know, some people, I don't know, maybe a band like At the Drive-In was their Nation of Ulysses years later or something like that, you know, whereas I didn't really do anything for me, that band. But, you know, I could see how some, you know, like if you were 16 or something, then, you know, you could see that and be like, whoa, you know, everything about that seemed sort of quite exciting. But yeah, Nation of Ulysses, man, yeah, fantastic. Them and Born Against really are like the two super.
Have you read that?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
I've held up a few times, but I'll hold up again. If anyone's not read that, do go and get that.
Brilliant, yeah. And I quite like the fact that he's sort of like quite dismissive about most of that stuff as well. But, you know, I mean, again, you know, coming from a place of absolute love for it as well. But yeah, I mean, again, Born Against, a hugely important band for me. I just absolutely devoured all that stuff. Their London show, unfortunately, wasn't quite the roaring success that it could have been, because Sam McPhee has lost his voice after about 2 songs. It was at the Euston Rails Club. Did you ever go there?
No.
Yeah, you're just next to Euston Station. That was great. And then like, Adam sort of took over and did the singing after. I mean, I was still like absolutely brilliant. You know, I was like still loved being there.
Yeah.
But yeah. Brilliant band, amazing band.
Yeah.
Can't say enough good things about Born Against.
So, okay, that's my subjects done. Do you have anything else you've got there you want to talk about, or?
I think there is like also this, just because it came out on 10-inch, like made me think this is really brilliant. This came out. It's I say archival. I think it's from. Was it recorded? Only just came out, but I think it was recorded maybe 10 years ago, something like that. Can't remember. The band, Silver Palms, and it's on this label No Town, which is Nathan, who used to be in the Gossip, guitarist from the Gossip. Okay. And he does lots of like limited run lathe cut stuff, and you know, regular press stuff, but quite varied. Some noise stuff. He put out like a Julia Fritz 7-inch, like 25 copies, which is absolutely brilliant. I think that's, again, it's not, that track had appeared on a compilation a while ago, but yeah, it's nice to have it like on a 7-inch. And he does lots of like quite nice packaging things with it. But yeah, that's really good. Kind of like let's call it like post-punk, because that's not a big enough catch-all term. Like, who knows? Like, I don't really understand sort of.
Village people are post-punk.
Yeah. Another band, I guess, like just repping Henry's label, like that came out recently. The Honey Radar compilation of all the 7-inches that Henry had put out by this band. This really revolves around a guy called Jason Henn,
right?
And just wonderful band, quite prolific, but an incredibly like high hit ratio, like with their stuff. There's a few records, few albums, one on What's Your Rupture, that was I think the last one that came out that was them. A Ruby Puff of Dust, and that kind of like almost does go against some of my golden rules. Some of it is a little bit whimsical, but he's a huge fan of like the Monkees, you know, like the band the Beatles could have been, and that is like, it shows, you know, like all of that stuff. Yeah, none of the rubbish that you get from the Fab Four, and all of the great stuff that you get from the pre-Fab Four. And they've done a solo album as well that recently came out. But yeah, that guy Jason Henn, I really think that band should be much more widely listened to. And there's lots on the records which are, you know, things kind of like fade in and out. Maybe a song's like 30 seconds long and it feels like it's just something that he'd recorded. But he's managed to kind of cobble together a band which all play entirely sympathetically with that style as well, which I think is like incredible in itself. But yeah, really brilliant band, Honey Radar. So yeah, that would be my tip. Yeah, as if anyone needs tips from like an old man. But yeah, that's the one.
You've like, there's half of the stuff you've mentioned today I've never heard of, so that's good for me. But that's good for me, because I've written some of it down. Also, I watch it back and I pick up stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you can't go wrong with Honey Radar.
Yeah.
I think that's a phrase.
Famous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a cliche because it's true.
So, any plans then? Future plans for the music?
Yeah, well, the
Wolfhounds, whatever else.
We're playing, if it goes ahead, I think in August, Preston Pop Fest, which will be really good because that's Rico's put that on, and he's just top promoter. Really, I think like really always treats us really well.
Yeah.
And we were due to go on like the sort of like album launch tour or whatever. So I guess we'll try and cobble together something from that. But there's already kind of just in lockdown, Andy's, sent over a whole bunch of new songs. And I think everyone's probably in that thing of like, by the time we all get out and start playing again, we'll be playing a whole different bunch of songs to what was released during lockdown or whatever.
I like, you know what? I like the fact that bands carried on releasing records through it all though. Yeah. And I know that a lot didn't, and I think that the bands that didn't, that held their releases back for like a year, I think they're going to regret it.
Yeah, definitely. Just put it. I mean, I don't know. People get weird about it, don't they? Because it get sort of too precious or what have you. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Especially the older that you get, I think we're into music because it's a good time or whatever. So just more good times.
Yeah, well, that's it. But also, do not have the time to sit around waiting.
No.
Get that one out and move the hell on.
Yeah,
did it.
I think maybe some of those people are sort of labouring under misapprehension that there are people sitting there waiting for them to do it as well. A lot of the times, I think it's quite easy to get lost in your project. People, spend so long assembling albums and stuff like that, and you put all of this. Everything that goes into it, and just being in a band is just like, I'm sure the people that haven't been in bands probably don't appreciate the sort of sheer amount of just admin that is involved in just being in a band, especially when you're older and families and you live far away. I mean, I know that's like exactly the case for you guys too, but so you put all of this stuff and it's like a big effort, and then comes out, and then like the next day someone else's record comes out and everyone's like, it's gone. So
exactly,
that's what it is.
Yeah.
And to pretend anything other than that is just madness.
Yeah.
So
exactly, it's the amount of headspace used up for me. Plan things like from logistics to songs to releases to everything else. It's just constant like around my head. Yeah. No, try and simplify your life. Yeah, exactly. Get the records out there. So it was great chatting.
Yeah, no, it's really nice to catch up. It's been like too long. Maybe we need to do like another collaboration and ruin an American band's London show.
I'm sure they had a great time.
We came all this way to do this, but
well, they're still going. They didn't split up.
Are they? Oh, okay, right. My mission to make people give up music altogether.
So we're going to wave goodbye, and then
brilliant.
Stop. We can carry on talking afterwards if you want, but
cool.
For the purpose of this, we're going to wave now. Bye bye.